knowledge, language, lifelong learning, things like that. Marko Koskinen wants to say something.
Thank you. I came here with a little bit of skepticism because I think the main problem with gaming and education is that it's based on the old-fashioned learning paradigm. So it doesn't really take the inner motivation into account. Rather, it just puts something on top of the old system. So how have you managed to go across, or have you managed to take on this problem?
Let's start there. I'm curious if anybody else has an answer to that. If games are all about internal motivation, and we're just putting them in the old system of education, are they losing their value? And what can be done about that?
But I would like to say that when I think about which school subjects I have liked and which I don't, it's all about the teacher. It has been all about the teacher during the grade school, in the high school, in the university. So that if the teacher isn't motivating, if the teacher doesn't make the subject interesting, then it just isn't. Then, of course, when you do things on your free time, then you do what you think is interesting. But usually you get the input why to do that from somewhere else. Your friend shows that this is cool, and you play it and you think it's cool as well, or then you don't. But I think that if the game can be that kind of system that shows you what's cool in a nitrogen system or what it was.
I would have a question to follow up on that as well that maybe would help. And that is to say, has anyone seen a really good teacher use a game or use play in a way that worked really well? What examples have you seen?
Marko, would you say? I think that's the time you should tell more about the idea you have in your own.
First, the answer to that question that, my teacher in biology made us create games. We designed our own games based on the ideas of the things that we were studying. That was one great thing, I think. My ideology or idea is based on democratic education, where every student has the right to participate in the governance of the school and decide pretty much about how they learn and what they learn and so on. So I'm just curious because the learning results coming out of those schools are so amazing that then can we produce anything similar with this gaming paradigm or something like that. I've created the first online school in Finland, and I haven't put anything game-based in it because I thought that I don't want to do anything external motivation into the system. Yeah.
Can I make a response? Oh. I think your question, going back to sort of the original point about we have this school system and university system and it's the way it is, and I would say it's broken. It's broken in the UK, and what can how do we fit games into this? Well, in an ideal world, we break it up, we look at it and we change it, but actually that's not going to happen. But where I think games are fantastic, when we don't use them simply as external motivators, for thinking about how learning could be, and thinking and getting change in through the back door. So I have this agenda around actually we need to change how we teach, we need to change how we think about teaching, where we still have a system which is predominantly about people putting themselves up as experts and standing on lecterns in classrooms and talking to students. And we have all this rhetoric about students as co-learners, about student agency, about student criticality, and yet we treat students as if they are vessels that need to be filled with knowledge. And for me, games are a way for getting people to rethink their own practice and rethink what they're doing. So I like that idea of them.
I have a couple examples of this too that I think are interesting. The first and the most exciting example I've seen about really good integration of game thinking within a democratic style school is a group called the Institute of Play. Have you heard of this school? It's in New York and now Chicago. It was an experiment that was put on by Katie Salen, who's a well-known game researcher and designer. And the entire school is playful. The entire school is created and every subject is taught through play and games. So that involves making games. That's where I get involved a lot of the time. To having teachers and game designers work together to create curriculum with their students. So this pair of a game designer with a teacher is something I just find so exciting. Now, at the university where I'm at, the way that I think we've seen the integration work is in a couple ways, but one of them has been designers like myself working with faculty to find the hardest topics, the topics that no one ever can teach very well, and working with them to develop custom games that are then used in those classes and shared. So that's probably the easiest integration. But a lot of the work that I do involves, well, informal learning environments. So we have, for example, a game that I'll mention later where students are going out to the forest, and the game is about finding and identifying different plant species. And the game is done in a class, it's like a field trip, but the goal of the game is to extend past the class. So we try to get people into the forest, to enjoy plants, so that they'll play when the class is over. So a lot of designs that I'm involved with, the success of the design is going to be measured whether people play the game after the class ends. And the final one that I'll talk more about later as well is what you mentioned, is having students build games in order to understand the topics. And this is something we've been doing for a number of years now and are finding really good results. I learned so much about the topic through making the game. We thought, well, why don't we have everybody make the game and teach about design as well?
Pasi will tell you more about the study in e-campus, but I would like to tell a little more about those Q2L School in New York, because the whole structure of the school is totally different. The school day is different. There's an informal part of it, and then the learning part. And they use a lot of informal learning. Their hobbies, they include those to the evaluation, and they can work with those strengths they have. So they are playing, but they are actually formal studying too. So that mixed works, I think so. And they can do things they love, and they can do things on focus way and in inquiry way. Pity that Katie hadn't time to come here, but there's a lot of people in net later this day who knows a lot of this school, and we will be back in this ideas later. Is there any question in the hall? Right now we have a few minutes left before we have our break. Yeah. For example, Jori Pitkanen asked about the learning paradigm. when involving the student in building the game, using and reflecting the knowledge, game education is more in constructivist paradigm than in the behaviorist paradigm. I think the point is where everybody does learn. We have different learners. Somebody learns by games, but there's a lot of people who don't have any benefit with games. And the question is, what is the task of teacher? What point of facilitating? How do you think? Do we need teachers?
I'm just thinking at this moment if we really need teachers or not, and I just wanted to connect to what Riika was saying before, that I think the teacher is the emotional connection to the subject, and it in some way it maybe it's like Rockstar, like this amplifying the emotions that people have to connect into a topic. So in a classroom, I think the teacher should be, I don't know if there always are, but the emotional connection and the to the subject of teaching and kind of facilitating interests and trying to inspire bigger interest in the topic.
Interaction, yes.
I would say that teaching and learning is something we do all the time. When someone shows you in that game how to do something, he is teaching you something. So the question about do we need teachers as professionals is the question, is there something that somewhere out there the system says that these people must learn? Because when people want to learn something, if they open the YouTube and look how someone does it, then the man who has done the YouTube video is teaching them something. So if we decide that there are no set skills that someone needs to learn, then we don't need teachers that teach those, because then the teaching is informal and it happens. But as a teacher student, I don't see the most important value of teaching as giving knowledge or anything like that. I think the thing the teacher can do is make people work together, give them the resources to like get more information on the topic, and it's more about the skills with the people and skills with the emotions than about teaching you specifically to do something.
In the future, we must produce 50% more than we do now. At the moment, every workers are paying for living for 1.6 retirees and children. After 20 years, the relation is 1 to 6. One workers will have produce living for 6 retirees and children. So, at the moment, those children which are in the school have to work longer, harder, and produce 50% more living and things and money than now. Yeah, that's not only in Finland, it's everywhere. So, at the moment, somebody says that it's a question about system learning. We must have people who realize the whole picture. how the system is working. And I think the goal of the school in New York, the goal is how they manage with the systems. The substance are not so important, but how to realize the world, how it's working, how different systems are working, I think that's the point. And at the time, the school system doesn't work in that way. It's broken, as Nicola said.